Hi, my name is Mary Caroline Admire, and my paper focuses on how the Native American culture was misrepresented in classic sitcoms and movies with musical numbers throughout cinematic history in the United States. So, first, I just want to start off with the hostility that began ever since Christopher Columbus and just how we had this strife between Native Americans and the Western Europeans. And this hostility just grew over time into what we have today. Um, and what we have today is just still angry Native Americans for the way they've been misrepresented and mistreated. Um, we get into a music controversy, and that is where we see whether Native American music should be included in music curriculum. Native Americans don't want to share their culture with the world because they don't want it to be made public and they don't want it to be misrepresented yet again. In order for this culture to share their music with us so we can preserve it, generations today must welcome Native Americans and not discriminate against them. And what we're going to do now is go back and look at the wrongs represented in cinematic history and address them and figure out how to move on from them. So, blackface minstrelsy is a really common performance that we experience with usually a white male actor painting his face black, and he's giving his audience a sneak peek or a look into the African American lifestyle. Well, we see that with singing Redface. That's the same thing as blackface minstrelsy, but it's giving that sneak peek into the Native American lifestyle. Both are mocking and degrading acts that encourage racial slurs and inauthentic representation of these cultures. And one thing I wanted to look at was in these sitcoms that are so classic, like classic examples such as Will and Grace, have really degrading jokes in them. And these jokes promote ethnic fraud and for people to lie about their heritage. So this implies to its audiences that, these degrading the Native American culture is worth it if you can get an educational gain. In other examples, classic examples such as Peter Pan, we experience cultural misappropriation, and that's when one culture is represented by a different culture inaccurately. We see this in the scene of What Makes the Red Man Red of Peter Pan. And Michael, Wendy's youngest brother, is not wearing a shirt. He's wearing war paint and a feather in his hair. So, in this type of setting, it's kind of a party setting, and this type of what Michael's wearing is not what would be worn in this setting. We also experience Peter Pan, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys playing Indian, and that's when these children are recreating the Native American culture through the stereotype they're seeing. This includes sitting Indian style. Their dancing is mimicking the Native Americans, and they smoke the peace pipe to be like a Native American. So what this does in the long run is it creates cultural confusion for kids, especially for Disney. Its main audience is targeted towards kids, so we're really exposing children at a young age to just an inaccurate culture. So cultural confusion is when an audience is exposed to a stereotypical Native American instead of like the true Native American culture. And finally, when the audience is exposed to the true culture, they're getting confused and they don't know what's true and what's not because they've seen the stereotype and then they've seen what's true, so they don't know. They're confused. Another example that I'd like to look at is I'm an Indian Too, and it's a big dance scene in Annie Get Your Gun. Originally, Judy Garland was cast in it, but for health reasons, she would later go on to be, she would have to resign the part and it would be recast by Betty Hutton. Well, what the reason why I want to look at both of these scenes is because Judy Garland, hers is a much less simmered down version because it's not the true Hollywood, you know, full makeup, full hair. I mean, it is, but it's not as exuberant as like what we'll see with Hutton as Annie. And the clip that I've connected to this, the music video you can watch for this, you're going to experience Judy Garland just being scared or frightened of the Indians that she's seeing. So much so that she shakes when she walks towards the chief and, you know, she finally asks, "Do I get to become an Indian?" And after a quick few words that she speaks in the Native American language of that the chief tells her to repeat, she becomes an Indian. And they have a big dance scene and lyrics that are just misrepresentative of the culture. So we experience Garland in a dress that's probably supposed to be representative of the Native American, probably what a typical Native American woman would wear, but who knows if it's accurate or not. We also experience all of the men in this scene are wearing a headdress, which is extremely inaccurate because the headdress is only worn by a very respected man in the tribe. And when all of these people are wearing them, it takes away from the significance. Finally, we get to the lyrics that Judy Garland sings, and she says, "Just like rising moon, falling pants, running nose, like those Indians, I'm an Indian too." So these lyrics are implying that, you know, Native Americans give these, that you can go through this ritual and become an Indian, and we'll give you like a fun, crazy name. And that's not true. Finally, we get to Betty Hutton's scene, and hers is more degrading because it amplifies. It's the Hollywood over-the-top thing that we experience, that we're going to experience in the next clip and that we'll see in the movie. Regardless of the actress in the scene, we get the representation that a pan-Indian exists, and what this means is that it's trying to imply that there are no nations across North America. It's implying that all Indians are the same, and that's not the case. As we know, there are 562 Native American nations. We also experience racial antipathy in this scene, where a group is poorly stereotyped, and in this case, the Native Americans are made out to seem as barbaric and crazy. Other classic examples of racial antipathy are not in this scene, but in general, drunk Indians and the Indian giver. Another concept I want to go over is the idealized sympathy, and this is when someone inaccurately tries to understand and empathize with the Native American culture, but it's been misrepresented. A classic example is Marvin Rainwater, and he makes it sound like the Cherokee Indians went through a really difficult, like that they were forced to go into the white man's world, and it was just a really hard transition, but in reality, the Cherokees assimilated pretty easily and pretty willingly into the white man's culture. At an article I looked at by Andrea Boea, her article talks about music controversy, and music controversy is going over whether or not Native Americans want their music to be whether it should be included in music curriculum. And the Native Americans don't want their music to be a part of this curriculum because they've been portrayed inaccurately and been misrepresented for so long that they don't want another aspect of their private life to become public and for it to be misrepresented yet again. So today we have to question whether or not the Native American culture is going to die, because of the way they've been treated, that they don't want to open up, that they don't want their, so much so that they don't want their culture to be documented for history. So, what in the 21st century, what non-natives must do today is make amends with Native Americans and give them the respect that they deserve, so that maybe one day the Native Americans can feel accepted in their own homeland. And maybe eventually they will feel like that they can open up to the non-natives, but in this time they'll show their culture in the way it's supposed to be portrayed, and in their own truthful way we can document the Native American culture.